Trade rumors continue to escalate surrounding the Toronto Maple Leafs following a new rumor that has dropped regarding one player that has fans very intrigued. We're going to break that down and discuss what this means going forward as Brad Treliving continues to prepare for his next move. We also have a few other Leafs updates to go over today, folks. Before we get into it all, if you're part of the percentage who aren't subscribed to the channel, this is the place to be for daily Leafs content. So make sure to smash that subscribe button. You guys have been absolutely fantastic with the support. About 71% of you who are watching right now aren't subscribed. You guys have been absolute beasts. There's a lot to go over today, and obviously it's an interesting part of the offseason. A lot of rumors continue to swirl as the regular season inches closer and closer. We have an interesting one today I wanted to talk about here, and there's a new article that has dropped and it was brought to my attention. I saw it on Twitter, and some people are talking about it here because, of course, it's a Montreal Canadian, so that's obviously going to garner some attention. I want to talk about this mainly for the fact I'm very curious to see what you think, and of course, people in the comment section, but as trade pitch sees Maple Leafs acquiring the $39 million defenseman. This is, of course, Mike Matheson. And there's been a lot of talk about the defense group and what's going on here. It seems very bare in the trade market, specifically for forwards. It seems like even the defense market seems a little bit more active based on the rumors and things like that, like Erik Karlsson and players like that. But it's Canadians acquiring Simon Benoit, Nick Robertson, and a third-round pick in exchange for, of course, Mike Matheson of the Montreal Canadiens. So, Darius, this one's interesting. Again, covering a lot of trades here on the channel. It's just kind of that time of year that's going to happen, for a little bit here. But this one in particular is kind of a fun one. And obviously trading between the Leafs and the Habs isn't super likely. But I think, this is a very intriguing one. And actually, you could argue makes some sense here from both sides. I know a lot of Habs fans really don't like Mike Matheson, so it's interesting to talk about. But at the same time, I'm not sure if the Leafs want to get rid of Benoit, but a framework surrounding a Nick Robertson trade makes a lot of sense.
I was going to say, I mean, the one part of this trade that I don't like the most is Simon Benoit.
Yep.
We've been on the Simon Benoit train for a long time now at this point, but it's an interesting trade idea. I don't know if Matheson is going to be a Montreal Canadian after this year. He's in the final year of his contract, heading into next season. So I think that he would, if a trade weren't to happen, he would end up finishing the season with the Montreal Canadiens, but not sure he would be back after that. So maybe they do look at moving him. So I think it's an interesting one. And for the Canadiens, if you look up and down their lineup, adding Nick Robertson to the lineup is an interesting one. He can score some goals. We know, he's got that. He's adding different elements to his game. So again, we've talked about this before in terms of, if he were to stay on the Toronto Maple Leafs, that it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. To keep a player like that around. It's hard to find a player like that right now, especially in the free agency class or what's left of this free agency class. So Simon Benoit, not sure you want to trade him, adds a lot to the Leafs lineup. And then, Matheson as well would add a lot more offense. And I think that's why the Leafs would look at this, would add way more offense. But again, he's a little bit older, 31 years old. So obviously if you were to sign him to a contract extension, which would have to happen if this trade were to go through, you're looking at probably by the end of it, he's 35, 36, you're stretching these contracts again, like Chris Tanev, like OEL to get the AAV down. So, it would add more offense. And honestly, I do like Mike Matheson. I think he's a really good defenseman at what he does. Like you mentioned, a lot of Habs fans don't really like him, maybe turning on him a little bit. You see that with Morgan Riley and some Leaf fans as well. We've talked about that on the channel as well. But, he would add more offense. I like how smooth of a skater he is as well. He can move the puck and skate the puck out. So it's an interesting one. I don't know why or the Leafs are giving up, Benoit, a third, and also Nick Robertson, who can score, can give you offensive output in this trade. But I think for the Leafs, if you're looking at Mike Matheson, that makes some sense. You need some offense from the back end.
Yeah, and obviously I saw it here, 8-year, $39 million deal. He is better than Simon Benoit. Does he fit this team better than Benoit? Yeah, I actually think he does. Obviously, this team has a lot of defensive-minded defensemen. I mean, Chris Tanev, Jake McCabe is, very good defensively. Benoit was, of course, good defensively. It would add some sort of, power. However, I don't know how long I'd be able to last with a defense, pairing or however they handle it with Morgan Riley and Mike Matheson. You can see here 6 goals, 25 points in 31 games. Not to say he's completely terrible, defensively, but at the same time, it's always fun to talk about, moves like this specifically. I do think there is something, though, to the framework of Nick Robertson and a third-round pick, because the Leafs don't have a lot of third-round or a lot of draft capital left, of course. I think they have a second-round pick they can trade. But Robertson, I feel like he now, especially with the amount of free agents left, which is minimal. I mean, there's a lot of buzz about Jack Roslovic and players like that, and obviously Roslovic has more value than Nick Robertson, but we covered Kuznetsov yesterday. Robertson should have some value here, and of course, didn't play great last year. If you pair him with a third-round pick, like, are you going to be able to get a Mike Matheson type, and is that someone who you want to get? Maybe not Mike Matheson, but I think the bigger storyline out of this trade is the Nick Robertson aspect, because I still think they should, even if they can't get a top 6 guy, maybe pair Robertson in a third and try to upgrade somewhere, not in a depth piece scenario, but just upgrade somewhere in. I mean, you could maybe get a top 6 if you pair some of your younger prospects. I think that's where a most likely trade comes from, even if it isn't Nick Robertson, or sorry, Mike Matheson, especially given the cap space that they currently have, which is only 2.9. You pair it with, of course, what Brad Living has said in the past about defense group and things like that. I actually think the framework of this, minus probably Benoit, but again, if a bigger trade happens with Robertson, Benoit probably is the defenseman that gets left out if they're not getting rid of Carlo or Riley. So you could say interesting, you could say intriguing. It's also odd as well to see Benoit thrown in trade talks, because it's just 2 years ago he was not, really a nobody with the Toronto Maple Leafs before he, of course, had his big spurts last year.
Yeah, when he came in from the Anaheim Ducks, we're all making jokes about, that he wasn't going to be a factor or anything like that. And of course, has become a fan favorite at this point. Obviously, we've been big fans of him on the channel, but you bring up a couple really good points. And I think if Mike Matheson was to become a Toronto Maple Leaf, you have to move out a defenseman. You would have a logjam there. It would make sense, especially with the salary cap, like you brought up. The Nick Robertson thing is interesting to me. I think Brad Living right now is trying to reconfigure the bottom 6. I think that goes without saying at this point. We know that. But I think that he's looking at his bottom 6 and he's going, okay, we're getting no point production from a couple guys here, like 0. And that's maybe okay if you think about it in theory, where it's like a David Kampf, where obviously he's really good on the penalty kill and he plays well defensively and stuff like that. But you're getting 0 point production. So I could see him looking at Nick Robertson and going, it's not great defensively. He puts up like some decent points every year. Didn't have the greatest year again, but he's actually been able to stay healthy. Maybe we hang on to him or ship him out. It's another body out. You're freeing up salary cap space by moving out. Presumably, we're assuming David Camp, Calle Yarncroke as well. You save up that cap, and you're bringing in guys like Joshua that might be scoring a little bit less, but you're going to have more scoring in the bottom 6 as a whole. So I think that's another interesting storyline to take out of this too. So I think that's what they're kind of going for. I think they're far from being done. I think there's a lot of dominoes that need to fall around the league as well for them to start moving out pieces. So Yarncroke, Camp got to be on the way out. I do wonder about Robertson as well, because Robertson, he's going to arbitration. That's a big thing too. So maybe you want to move off that before then, right, as well. So you still have McMahon down there, but he has his contract, right? So we don't know exactly what Robertson's going to make. So pretty interesting storylines, I think, as we head towards August here. But ultimately, I think that a trade like that could work. But I think you're giving the Canadians, a 3rd-round pick, a pretty solid defenseman, a guy who can score in their bottom 6. And you're getting back some offense, but an older defenseman. So I don't know if that makes sense right now. Brad Living should continue to focus on, obviously, a top 6 forward. They need that one more piece.
Yeah, and I think that they could see Matheson if they want more like heavy offense, maybe complement, or I guess kind of offset the fact that they don't get a top 6 wing. Maybe if that happens there, but again, you're looking at the defense group. I think it's pretty solid. And Benoit, it's just funny seeing his name thrown in trade talks. He does have a little bit of value, and of course, he's on a very solid contract, especially with the cap going up and things like that. But that'll wrap it up. Let us know down below what your thoughts are. Obviously, things are a little bit moving slow regarding the transaction department right now, so we'll keep you up to date every step of the way. Thank you guys for watching. See you later.